Hello and welcome to And the Beat Goes On. My name is Arion Harley Emerson. I'm the Director of Music and Operations here at the Choir School of Delaware. We are excited to be on episode 22. I can't believe we've been socially distant this long, but yet here we are. And we're excited that we're being joined today by composer and conductor Kevin Memley. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm also being joined today by Brittany Stanton at the choir school. She serves as the Director of Education and our assistant conductor. Thanks for being
Hello,
with us, Brittany.
hello, everyone. It's good to be here.
And we are also being joined today by Naishan. Naishan has frequently joined us for our conversations. And why don't you tell us a little bit something about yourself and your experience at the choir school, Naishan?
All right. I've been at the choir school for 10 years. It's been great. And I'm hoping to expand my knowledge with music and with the choir school more.
Awesome. Well, first, Kevin, thank you again for being with us today. We're just thrilled to have you on. How are you? How are you doing? Life is a little crazy right now. How are you making out in this pandemic?
Well, thank you again for having me on, and I just consider myself blessed to be here and have the opportunity to share. California is on fire right now. We have like a million fires everywhere, so if my voice cuts out or gets a little scratchy, I apologize, but we have a gray day outside, and you can look at the sun all day and your eyes won't hurt at all. So it's just that kind of overcast. COVID has, swept through our nation and the world, but I'm glad to report we are healthy. I've got a family that is working, and I have my job, and kids are actually starting school today online. So it's a big day here at the Memley house. No complaints. I think that's my short answer. So we are adjusting just as everyone does, and because of that, we make some different career choices, or maybe try to angle and figure out a way. How can we get back to normal? And I think the answer to that question is you just have to keep going. And I'm lucky to work in a field that I love. I get paid for what I love to do. And if that means I can't do maybe composing or directing at one time, I can stick my hands in another musical fire and go from there. So no complaints here.
Awesome. And tell us, how have you been staying musical? How have you, what fires are you sticking your hands into these days?
Well, I did mention that I'm also directing, and I direct at a local church choir. We have about 25. On a good day, we have 30, and that's a good thing for a small church of about 250 members. So I am directing. I'm doing the Zoom thing. So as soon as the restrictions came in California, we figured out a way to meet online. And since the choir does most of my own music, it wasn't too far of a stretch for me to conduct a rehearsal of my own music to my singers. And at first, I did familiar literature that we were all used to, a lot of the arrangements that I have done. And I think one of the most important things is that I discovered as a director, it's really not all about me. It's not about how I wave my hands. It's really about the camaraderie coming together of the singers. And I discovered, and I saw it popped out to me when we were on those initial Zoom meetings, that people crave that fellowship. They crave that connectedness. And so what I was providing for them was not a lesson in vocal training or how to interpret the piece. We were literally bare boned down to, we need this experience because it gives us identity. And that was an important thing when COVID struck, and we were all I think we all had the attitude, I can do this for a week, oh, this will pass over in 3 weeks or a month. And then as time went on, I started noticing that people look forward to that gathering because we could connect with one another. And it really solidified the ideas of, I think for me, why choral music is so special in the first place. And that was really important because you don't see that a lot as a conductor. You see that as a singer. My singers have 25 different reasons for coming to choir. Everyone has their own reason. And so I learned a little bit how to weigh my expectations of the group with really what was important for them to keep singing. And I thought that was really important. So I've transitioned out of being a director in person to doing it on Zoom. Over the summer, I've continued to write music for the choir, intending to perform, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit later, but I'm preparing for the fall. So there's been a little bit of recovery in how do we survive this. I haven't embraced any of the technology. I know some friends in California that are working on that live, no lag Zoom technology. It's just not why I'm in choir. I'm there for the people experience. So I wish them all the best. It may solve a lot of problems in the near future, but I'm not a part of that.
Awesome. Nishan, I'm going to pivot to you. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask today?
Yes. How did you engage with music as a kid?
How did I what?
How did you engage with music as a kid?
My background obviously was in piano. I get criticized for putting some complex piano stuff, but I just love doing that in my choral music. I was trained as a classical pianist, and that was my route. I grew up in a musical family, and that was my road. And so we're talking about age 5 to 17. We're not talking college. I took 12 years of private lessons. I took music theory, I guess the equivalent of AP music theory now. And I got that all under my belt. And at 17, in my last 2 years in high school, I joined a choir and became their full-time accompanist. And my life literally went down the choral music road. I fell in love with choral music at that point. And so I accompanied this gentleman who was my high school director for 30 years. We spent our careers together. And in fact, just in the past 4 years, I've left from accompanying him. He's now in administration, and I'm now directing church choir and writing. So as a kid, it was mostly piano, a lot of instrumental studies. I grew up in Southern California. I don't know if you have this system out there, but we had something called Certificate of Merit. And so I studied that as a 10-level course of piano training. So that's where I got a lot of my training. I don't have any musical training in composition or conducting from collegiate classes. It was all done prior to that or on the job as I was hired immediately after high school to become a full-time accompanist.
Awesome. And Brittany, do you have a question you'd like to throw in?
So I'm curious, you being an accompanist for so many years and now switching to being the head director, what kind of challenges along that journey did you encounter?
Well, I think the challenges along the way initially were that you just don't become a director overnight. You just don't become a leader overnight. And so I spent many years often blaming the choir. Why can't they do what I'm asking them? It also relates, Brittany, as a composer as well. What is perfect in my head, why can't they sing it? And I soon began to realize that maybe I need to look inward. And I had a lot of help with some friends that I would bounce ideas off of. Does this work? And it was my 20-year overnight success. I took 20 years figuring out how to write choral music that was accessible to most singers, and it was a long process. And if you don't give up on that, but you just constantly work at it, I think it develops some lifelong habits. As a conductor, I've always been a little sloppy. I've never, had some formal training, but I can get my message across. And so my choir knows, and I've developed my own hand lingo and have studied just by observing, some great great directors that we have in this area. But I find as a director, it's not so much the hand waving, it's how do you inspire the group? I think that comes from my teaching, because as an accompanist, I was also an assistant teacher. I taught music theory for 15 years at a Clovis school. So when I'm at the podium, it might be sloppy, but I'm trying to get the message across because I have a goal. My number one goal as a conductor is to inspire the choir to do what I ask them. And if it looks silly, then I'll learn along the way. But as a conductor, that's one of the odd things. Also, as well as an accompanist, I make all of my accompanists, they get nervous under me. And I intimidate them because I'm first a pianist, But I try to just let them have their own space. And I have a fabulous accompanist right now. I wouldn't trade for anything. So there's a little bit of that you got to figure out your wiggle room and where do you belong and where do the choir belong, where does your pianist belong. So I've got great experiences along the way. Again, no complaints. So thanks for that question.
So where does the music come from? And what is your process? Are you like, and I love asking this question of composers, like, are you someone that's like, oh, I had an idea, I write it down, I kind of go to the keyboard and then it kind of happens, or I heard something, then I begin to mold it. Like where does your music come from?
Oh, it would be easy to say I have the composition spigot and I just turn it on and put my music underneath it and let the notes fall. I'll give you that answer by referencing a few ideas. If our audience is familiar with my Ave Maria, which was the first one that I had published in 2008, that was one that I actually committed myself to actually writing in the computer first. It goes against a lot of my preferences. I love pencil and paper. I love sitting at the piano. I love the texture and the feeling of being there and creating with my own hands and my brain. I like that. But the Ave Maria, and if you study enough of my music, you will find out that the Ave Maria is definitely a different crafted piece because of the way that I approached it. And I forced myself just to write it and think of it and conceive of it at the computer in the notation software. I have another unpublished piece called Melissa Sang a Melisma. And it's kind of a Handel classical, fun little piece. And I wish it would be picked up, but the experience that I got from that was I had that text. I saw, well, that's a cute little saying, Melissa sang a melisma. And I took my family to Disneyland, and while driving back on the Ridge Route, coming over the mountains back into the Central Valley, that idea came into my head. So I'm driving, and I literally had the whole song 2.5 hours later when I got home, and I notated it out. I mean, I was really, really just concentrating on it. And here's another one, my Magnificat. These are all the A stories. I should give you the C minus stories as well in a minute. But the Magnificat as well, the only time this happened, it came to me in a dream. I am so blessed that it did. So that opening statement, Magnificat, and the development of that idea in the first movement came in a dream. I woke up, went to the piano, wrote it out. Of course, I was obsessed with all this in the weeks prior to that inspiration. So when I get inspired, where is that tap that I go to? It usually comes from the text. And so I let that text just permeate me. I think about it. I read the poetry, a few times a day. I don't necessarily run to the piano or run to my notation software and say, okay, I'm going to write a piece today, because it just doesn't work for me that way. However, many of the ideas just don't come. And I've taught enough composition lessons to students to let them know it's a process. You have to learn how to manage this. At least for me, when I get an idea and I get an opening melody, I notate it down, but then I put it away. I just put it on the shelf for a few days. And then I allow myself to naturally develop those ideas. And I hate doing that. No one likes doing that, especially if you have deadlines. But the thing is that I tell my composition students, if your piece doesn't know itself, it has to have an identity and a knowledge to itself in those first 4 measures or 8 measures, then you don't know where the end of the piece is. And so you need to put enough information in that opening idea, that opening statement, that it can carry you on a journey that always points back to itself. That way you have consistency. I see too many beginning composers write 4 operas and a musical movie score in one song, and they're trying to add too many ideas to their cool idea that they got, that they blew by, because to them that was their introduction. Oh, I got to have an introduction before I get to the cool part. And I try to tell people that, you know, there's good information there. Good composition is taking what you have and developing that. So if you look at least my style, it follows more of a post-romantic style, which means you develop the melody and then you just repeat and vary, repeat and vary. It's nothing new. It's old, tried, you know, ideas that sonically, you know, I'm revitalizing with new harmonies and maybe new rhythms, but I literally consider myself standing on those classical and romantic giants. And that's how I approach composition. That's where my ideas come from. So, you know, and you get writer's block all the time. And I tell people in the composition class to say, cross off that page that you thought was a great idea, or turn it into a new song. Be willing and daring enough to take that idea that you thought was cool, but you're having trouble shoving it in your composition, and X it out. Put it into something else, because that's an idea that doesn't fit within your opening statement. And if that's the one thing that I could share with all composition students, that would be, you can tell I'm very passionate about it, but thank you for the question.
No, I think that's a really, really interesting, you know, and I think that's really good advice, because I think so often when you sit down, it's like you have an idea, but it's not fully fleshed out and you've not really developed it. But in that time span, another idea has come up. And so naturally our tendency is to say, oh, let me take this and let me take that and let me put it two ideas together. And so I don't know. I think that's something that, I don't know. It's very interesting. And I guess it makes sense that I like the idea of what you're saying too, that like exit out, and maybe not even exit out, maybe just like take that page out of the notebook and it's the next piece. You know, I like that idea.
Yeah, I think early on, especially with so many piano lessons, I got used to the idea of not being afraid of failure. And you know, as a composer, you're putting ideas out there for everyone to judge, and they come from the depths of your soul. And so you get this, you know, complex going on with yourself, like, are people going to like this? And you just really have to write for yourself, for satisfaction. If you're writing for anyone else, I don't find that satisfaction. To me, the inspiration comes when I get that initial idea and I flesh it out and it's complete. It's easy for me now because I've learned how to accept failure. It's easy for me now to allow choirs to enjoy the pieces that I write and let them have their own experiences with it. That comes back to me in the form of an email or a phone call, and people say, I really enjoyed your work because this and that. And I'm so glad, because that's not a part of what I do, but that's a process along the way that I get to enjoy at the end. It's like giving birth to a child that you let go in the world and you don't get to see it anymore. You have to have confidence that you raised that child right, and then that child will go out and bless other people.
That makes a lot of sense to me. One thing about your compositional style that I really like, there are a few things, there are not a lot of things. I love how many triplets you use, and half note triplets. I love half note triplets. I've seen you use a lot of half note triplets over the years, and whenever I see it, I'm like, yes! And I also really love this almost perpetual motion kind of locomotor feel, and I gravitate towards music that's rhythmic, not fast, but music where there's a strong sense of both macro beat and micro beat within it, and those are pieces that I just naturally, they just jive with me. And even if they are slow and lyrical, like the Ave Verum, there's and I love that, the pairing of what you do with that kind of it's like this consistent locomotive kind of perpetual motion kind of thing going. And I also see that in and the O Magnum Mysterium, and O Magnum, and then once it gets going, you can feel that other kind of perpetual motion going over this more lyrical line, and I absolutely love that because it allows for this unfolding. And the very first piece that I actually heard of yours had that feeling. It was the O Magnum Mysterium, and it was at the Bella Bartok choral competition, and there was a choir singing it by the name of the Philippine Magical Singers. And I had never heard this arrangement before, and I just remember everyone it was so beautifully sung, and the composition, it was just not the Lauritsen, and so we were all just it was an amazing experience. It was an amazing experience. I'm convinced they won the competition because of that piece. So, wow. It was just really an incredible experience to hear that, and that feeling of those triplets and the locomotive kind of perpetual motion and the long lyrical line is a Memley fingerprint.
Yeah.
And I see that.
You got me.
Yeah.
I stand accused.
And so I absolutely love it. And it just, I don't know, it feels great. It feels really great.
I think I mentioned when we were at the Dallas convention, maybe back then, that I consider a lot of my music to have these underpinnings of rhythm. And the word I like to use is momentum. I like my pieces always to have a forward or backward motion, even when I'm expressing complex rhythmic ideas or simple ideas. I think that just allows the listener to ease into some of the harmonies and dissonances that I'm throwing at them, because they know that we're never going to stop on something, and momentum is the best word to describe that. And so it's purposeful. I thank you for recognizing that. It's not my invention. I take it from great composers like Brahms, and even 20th century composers as well that use that 2 against 3 or multi-rhythmic pattern. But the Ave Maria and the O Magnum are great representations of having that underpinning of rhythm.
I absolutely love it. And for those who are watching, I want to bring you into this conversation. When I was a graduate student at the University of Delaware, I sang in the UD chorale that Paul Head conducts, and we sang the Ave Verum at one of the conventions, the Dallas National Convention, and we were—
Great job of it too.
What was that?
You did a great job of it too.
Thank you. And in the Ave Maria, you really helped us to understand that idea of motion and stasis and such a slow burn and build. And I remember this really long crescendo that was with that perpetual motion, and this long kind of journey through this crescendo, which was just pages long, maybe 2 pages long. But it was just the perfect way to drop into that Sancta Maria, and it just really allowed to have this incredible moment, and I'll never forget that. And Kevin was rehearsing with us in the church, and I felt like I had been in a room with the light on for the first time. It was really an incredible experience that has stayed with me, and with any choir that I work with on that piece, I always remember that moment. I'm like, no, I'm sure this is how it goes. I have it on good authority that this is how it goes. Now, one of the pieces that I want to spend some time talking about is your piece, We Will Sing of a Dream. So this past year, the choir school went on a journey where we had a set of music called We Are the Music Makers that we had as part of a large concert, and then it transformed into our ACDA set for the Eastern Division Conference that took place this past March. And Kevin's piece was one of the anchors of that set. And we commissioned a piece by Tim Brent set on the O'Shaughnessy Ode, which is the We Are the Music Makers and the Dreamers of Dreams. And we paired it with Kevin Memley's We Are the Music, We Will Sing of a Dream, which the text is not quite directly from that. But can you tell us a little bit about the piece and where it came from?
Sure. This was one of the rare opportunities where a collegiate director, Dr. Carol Ann Maxwell from the Fairfield University, I believe that's in Maryland, close to you guys, she contacted me in the interest of her 70th anniversary for her Glee Club to celebrate the college, to celebrate the mottos and the culture and the ideas that their school had represented and had been founded on. And so I happened to be in New York at the time, and it was fortunate that we could get together, and we met over sandwiches at a Carnegie Deli in Manhattan and had a great time there. And she said that she would like to have some of these themes from her school incorporated within the piece. And one of the themes that she mentioned was care of the whole person, to care for everybody in mind, body, and spirit. And so that translated into the piece in Latin as I saw it fit, cura personalis. So that became kind of the rallying cry. So she gave me that nugget, somewhere to fit into a text that I hadn't quite formulated yet. And I think I had been toying with the O'Shaughnessy text for some time, and after our meeting, I thought, well, maybe this might be a good pairing. But the poem was too long for what she described to me, and so I thought, well, this is an inspiring point. It's a good point to kind of to dive off of. And so I took some of those initial ideas of being the music makers and the dreamer of dreams and kind of molded that into the request that Dr. Maxwell had given me. I also came up with the idea that this would be an idea of representing the culture of the song or of the school, but somehow my goal was to make it a rallying cry and get people to kind of get behind it in the song itself. The song itself really is about this spark of an idea. Let's sing about a dream. Let's sing about a place that we can call unity, and then let's get people marching to that without hate, without anger. And so that's how that text kind of all came together. And then, of course, weeks later, I'd come back from my trip in New York and emailed her, and I said, hey, does this work? And she was all for it, all thumbs up. And so it really went a long way to have, someone that you work with on a commission text give you that much freedom. And so it wasn't soon after that I had began to develop my ideas on the piece and write the music.
I absolutely love it. Can you tell us some features of the pieces and and we'll listen to it in a little bit, but kind of prepare us for what we'll hear.
Absolutely. The opening segment before the choir and the text comes in is meant to kind of to open the imagination, to open up the ears to the possibility of what's coming along. There's a sense of randomness to the piano. I've given it full reign of the accompanist to, roll those chords up and down that the accompanist plays to their liking. And I think that's kind of that first spark of an idea. When the choir comes in and sings this chorale segment, it is the main melody that follows all the way through, but it's represented in a way that, as previously discussed today, has these low rhythmic underpinnings. There's just not much going on. It's just the initial idea, and then harmonically it's being supported. But then the piano comes in and that momentum starts carrying us through, and it becomes an idea. Let's sing of a dream that we can call unity, and we're going to gather together for that purpose. And so the piano just plays this pulse of an idea that then the choir can expand upon and start riffing on, for lack of a better word. They can just start making up their own ideas of dream. And hopefully as a performer and as a listener, you guys have had experiences with this. When you performed it, you shared that dream. It's not my dream, it's your dream. It's a part of your lives that you are contributing to that idea. And so finally, we almost have this this female versus male section in the middle, where we kind of culminate into that unity in octaves on the word unity, I think for the very first time. And so at that point that we reach this apex of we are singing in unity, then we actually join the dance. We actually join the song. And it's that rhythmic 7/4, I don't know what it was published in, maybe it was multimeter, but
It's multi, yeah.
was it multimeter? Okay, I remember vaguely working on that.
Conduct.
I have my original score in 7 because I hear it in 7 because I don't want these bar lines interrupting that phrase. But if you all know that phrase, it's the cura personalis, we will sing the song. And that inspiration came to me from church bells like pealing on a Sunday morning. Dung, 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 dung. It's just the major scale in descending pattern. And so that whole idea was to be kind of, although it represents a new idea, that pattern harmonically goes with we will sing of a dream. And so which is also an ascending scale. And so putting those together was compositionally sound. And so my idea was that was the development that I was going to have in that section. And then we close with just some cheering and shouting and stomping. And I don't know how much fun you had doing that. In the studio here,
Fun.
it was pretty hard to stomp and clap in the studio and keep it all together. But there's a studio recording out there somewhere. You may have heard that, or maybe you've heard the local San Joaquin chorale that performed it and premiered it on the West Coast here. That was a group that I was a part of a few years back. But that's kind of the idea of the piece. Hopefully it inspires hope, and it certainly gives a message that we can all ponder, and especially during this time. So
I just love the feeling of it. I love the right hand. I love being in the keys there. It just feels good, and like a yum dum dum dum.
yeah,
It's such a great. It just feels so incredible. It was a really special piece for us. I shared this with Kevin earlier when we were on our journey and performing this at ACDA. It was literally this was it before everything shut down. We had been working on this music for a year. We had this big program. We are the music makers. This is one of the big pieces that we're doing, anchoring the set. And we had worked really, really, really hard. And, we had like a big concert the week before of different repertoire, and we were trying to get this back and reworked into our bodies and voices and beings and all of that. And everything went great. The first performance, it went great. It was wonderful. We were feeling wonderful about it. So, you come super early and they tell you, warm up, be in this room, be in the wings, ready to go. Everyone's like practicing, making sure it's like that, piece that's like a 9.9999 is now a 9.99999999999. So we decided we weren't going to do any warming up or singing or anything, that we were just going to take that time to be with one another. And so we did an affirmation circle, and everyone said something about the person who was sitting next to them. And it was a wonderful experience of being together. And for our choir, for those who don't know, it's an intergenerational choir, so there are different ages. Our students are predominantly Black and Brown students. We've got adult singers of every shade of the rainbow. And we were in many ways an underdog to be here on this big stage at ACDA, and you don't see many people coming from urban cities and programs and people that look like us at ACDA. And to have this moment together where we were valuing each other, and then your beautiful music, it was such an incredible moment. And I literally just, once the the momentum of the piece begins and we begin taking this journey, I just lost it. I just could not stop crying for the entire piece. Conducting, just weeping. It was just an unbelievable, spiritual, sacred experience that, like, if I never was able to conduct a choir again or put it on a concert again, it would still be a worthwhile journey. So thank you for this beautiful piece. Nishan, what was your experience like with the piece?
Oh, all right. So to start this off, this was one of those pieces that that was really rhythmically impressive because it felt like when you sung this piece, there wasn't really any dissonance between the instruments, no notes or no rhythms going out of place or anything. And I think that helps what what the song's message is trying to bring. Actually, you know how we're all united and singing together, and I think it really paid off in the end when we did sing this at ACDA, and especially when we had the what is it called, the before we did the actual concert, the little meeting.
Affirmation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the affirmation. I think that really helped us connect together and let us realize that we're a family.
Yeah.
Brittany, what was your experience like? Thank you, Nishan.
So I, you know, that moment on the stage, and we could all see that you had started to cry, and so like it became a very hard choice to continue to watch for fear that we would all lose it, but we didn't, and it was great and it was brilliant. But I am curious, you know, we, gosh, you know, we worked very, very hard to get percussion. We felt like it was just such a huge contribution to the piece, and without having it, that it would really be lacking something. And so we, you know, we're very lucky to be able to find some percussionists really close to the performance date. And it really, you know, it adds to the piece so much. And so I'm curious of the decision to add that percussion in the composition process for this piece, you know, how you came to that decision.
Personally, my choirs would always attend the local Fresno State performances. They hosted a command performance night that we were fortunate enough to make almost every year. And after the high school choirs would perform, then the collegiate choirs would perform a work in appreciation of the entire day's festival. And they would always close with something with the chorus, and then maybe the percussion. And you know, they didn't have a lot of instruments, pitched instruments, because they didn't have a lot of room in their performance hall. But they always brought in a full complement of percussion, piano, marimba, you know, all of those tonal instruments, and they would perform a piece. And it's just always been inspiring. So if you look at a lot of my orchestrations for like my Magnificat, my Gloria in Excelsis Deo, and this piece, We Will Sing of a Dream, they have that same kind of core sound. I consider myself a pianist, and that translates the best as a percussionist as well. I'm not a woodwind player. I have limited experience with strings, but I go towards those two instrument groups, percussion and strings. So that's kind of why I thought it was an effective, it helped punctuate the text, and I wanted it to do that.
It felt to be fundamental and not ornamental.
Yeah.
It felt like this heart. It was this like it was showing this unified heartbeat that we share, and it was just, you know, I don't know, just it just captured so much in such a beautiful way.
I'm honored. Can we hear it?
Yes, we're going to hear it. I'm also going to read the text as we get ready to pull that up, because I think that a piece of music it's important to have the text there. So this is inspired by Oshanti's ode with Kevin's own text here, but the text reads as follows. We will sing of a dream whose stone is long set. We will make music with our mouths and hands. We will make music with our hearts. We will sing of a dream. We will sing of laughter and the fire of life. Set the world aflame, not by arrows of hate or anger. 'Tis by love we give our lives to the dream and hold straight to the light till dawn. We will hope of a daybreak yet to come. We will sing of a dream called unity. Cura personalis, we will join the song. Ite inflammate omnia, we will sing. And so the cura personalis means care of the whole person, and the ite inflammate omnia is just the world aflame. Absolutely love it. And here we go. This is the Choir School of Delaware performing Kevin's We Will Sing of a Dream in Rochester at the ACBA Regional Convention. such a fun, incredible experience to sing that piece. It's so brilliant. It's got everything that one needs to have in like an epic piece in like 4 minutes, 5 minutes, however long it is. And here's the thing about it, is that when we were telling you about this particular epic performance, that was the first performance. That wasn't even the one that we were talking about. That was this incredible transcendent experience. That performance wasn't recorded because they recorded one of the sessions. And like at some point, it's like you're like, oh man, I really wish that we had that recording so that we could experience that together and to have captured that lightning in the jar. But what I can say is that means that that moment is forever perfect, and that no one will ever be able to experience what we were able to experience together in that moment on that day. And like, yes, there were people watching, but it wasn't about them. It was really about about us, and we've had this experience that I feel like has just even pulled us together. So thank you for writing such a beautiful piece. It was really, I think, quite a huge part of our journey over this last year. And so
that is so great to hear. But I have to, I respectfully correct you on one thing. You didn't capture lightning in a bottle, because that lightning first came from Dr. Maxwell, and she passed it on to me, and I got to play around with that lightning for a little while, and then you guys took the reign and you played with that lightning. But you probably have no idea the type of lightning, joy, and love that you guys spread at that performance. The fun part about it is you get to keep enough for yourself, because you're right, you do keep those memories. I have wonderful memories like that as well at Carnegie Hall and in California and in Hawaii, you know, these places that just define us as music sharers, as you know, dreamers of dreams and music makers. So without being too eloquent about it, I appreciate all of you singers for taking that lightning, for owning it, and that was a great performance, but also for sharing that, because who knows who's going to be in that audience and who's going to pick up that torch and do the same thing for someone else. And then those sales numbers and royalty sheets that come out yearly, they don't mean as much anymore, because there's not a whole lot going on there, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you. And we're just about to wrap up here, but I did want to check in to see what's next for you coming up this fall. What should we be looking for, not looking for? How are you going to be making music, and what are you going to?
You bet. All right, I'll keep this real short here, but I have a new solo series out with Pavon. The times kind of demand that we can't all congregate and meet together. So that's one thing. You can find that on my website. I'm sure you guys can post that, but that's up at kevinmemley.com. And then come on in. Come on in, Kyle. This is my youngest boy, Kyle, here. He's doing his first day of schoolwork. But I've got a church choir going, and I've been doing Zoom with them over summer, just keeping them singing and mindful of some of the music that I write for them. And on September 1st, we're going to have our first in-person meeting. Out in California here, we're not allowed to gather inside for a very large number, and I just don't have the ability to keep the place spotless and clean and disinfected. So we're going to have outdoor rehearsals. We've got enough space to distance and to mask. And then our performances for Sunday mornings are we're meeting on the block. We're not in our sanctuary, and we're kind of at a cross street in downtown Kingsburg. So we block off the street. We got the city's permission to do that, and we have about 100 people in their little pop-up tents with the shade, and they sit anywhere out on the street, and we have services there. So I'm going to have in September the choir doing new music of mine. So my compositional direction has gone from writing a lot of these big choral works to writing what's capable and can be performed on a weekly basis with a small church choir that half of them don't read. So, you know, it's what we're doing. I am backing off a little bit in choral music in terms of my writing load. Some of my writing load was huge from 2008 to 2016, and I honestly feel like I'm still burned out from that. So composition for me is always been my number one hobby. And if I keep it that way, that means I can always love it and enjoy it and come back to it. So I don't try to make this a full-time living. I do directing, composition's one part of that. You saw my son in here, but a lot of my time is now focusing on my three boys. One of them just moved out, and that's the youngest one right there. They are all musical, and I really feel it upon my heart that this is the time that dad needs to pour into them. So I'm really taking a step back. If I write something, if I get something published, that's fine, but I'm not pursuing that as a career right now. I know it will be there if it's so blessed. So I consider myself blessed through all of this. It's been a fun ride so far. I'm not going to give it up, but I'm also not going to press those buttons, especially during COVID. I've got much more, bigger family responsibilities. So that's where I'm at. Life is good. I've had a few panic attacks, but other than that, I'm not going to complain because I know life has been, so much worse for other people.
Hey, well, thank you for that. We've shared out links to your site so that you can, folks can check out the new series for solos, which is a great idea. I know we're going to be checking it out because we're trying to figure out what we're going to be doing in just a couple of short weeks here. And please do check out Kevin's work. We absolutely love it. So please, 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 please support those works there and program them. It's really great music, which provides a lot of wonderful pedagogical opportunities for you and for your choir. So please, please do it. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a pleasure. I could go on for 3 more hours. This has been so much fun. Thank you, Brittany, for joining us. Thank you, Nishan, for joining us. And we're getting ready to sign off now. So everyone, take it easy, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.